All right. Welcome, everyone. My name is Jessica Manfredi, and I am Washington State's student loan advocate. I'm joined today by my co-presenter, Amber. Amber, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. My name is Amber Hay. I am the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Advocate, or PSLF advocate.
Thanks, Amber. So today we're going to give you important federal student loan updates. In other words, we'll let you know what's currently going on with student loans right now, which is a lot. Wherever you are in your student loan journey, you are not alone. There's millions of Washingtonians that are also impacted by student loan debt. And our hope is that by the end of the presentation today, you'll feel better about your knowledge, have an idea of what your next steps are, and feel more comfortable navigating your resources. All right, I'll pass it over to Amber.
All right, everybody. So before we dive into our material, I do have a few housekeeping items. So the presentation is being recorded. We do plan to post the recording onto our Student Loan Advocate webpage, and we'll also provide the slides for the presentation, so you'll have access to the links. We do also, for anyone that's registered to attend the presentation, we'll send it out to you as well via email. So we'll get that out hopefully within about a week or so. The chat function is disabled for participants, so only myself and Jessica will be using that to share links and resources. You are also muted as well, because we do have quite a few folks with us today. So for questions, please enter your questions using the Q&A function, as well as upvote questions there that you would like to have answered live. There's a little thumbs up icon that you can click on underneath every person's question. We will have time for questions at the end. And then we do have live closed captions that you can enable on your Zoom icons. So today we're going to give you a brief overview on how to find your federal student loan information. Then we're going to shift gears to talk about two of the return to repayment programs that are ending at the end of September, specifically the on-ramp period and the Fresh Start program. We're also going to discuss what is happening with the IDR payment count adjustment and review the SAVE lawsuit and how it may impact you as a borrower. Lastly, we're going to provide some resources and information about how to get individual support to help you with pursuing student loan forgiveness. We did want to give a snapshot of what student loan debt looks like here in Washington State. As of about March 2024, we have over 790,000 federal student loan borrowers in Washington. Our outstanding federal student loan debt balance is about $28.7 billion, with our average federal student loan debt being $32,498 per borrower. We're putting these numbers here to, again, try to normalize student debt as much as possible. Millions of people in the US, and of course, many in Washington, are impacted by student loan debt. So you're not alone in navigating the system and dealing with all of the feelings that come with that. Student loan debt is not something to be ashamed of. We encourage you to have conversation about student loans with your friends, families, and others in your circle who might be impacted by student loans. The more we talk about it, the more we get the word out there about resources like our office. In recognition that student loan debt is a major issue for Washingtonians, our state legislature passed the Student Loan Bill of Rights in 2018. This law actually created our office, the Office of the Student Loan Advocate, within the Washington Student Achievement Council. In addition to creating our office, it also allows our state to enforce state consumer protection laws against student loan servicers. Student loan servicers now must also notify borrowers annually about our office and about how to get in contact with us on their website. And it also allows borrowers like you to submit questions and complaints to our office to get individual assistance and resources. So you might be thinking, well, this sounds great, but what does the Student Loan Advocate Office really actually do? Since our office's inception, we have worked to support current and future student loan borrowers by addressing complaints on student loan issues like receiving inaccurate information from student loan servicers or needing help lowering monthly payments. We also create materials and outreach presentations like the one today about various student loan topics and different forgiveness programs and repayment options. We also educate borrowers on their rights and responsibilities so that hopefully you can feel more empowered to manage your student loan debt. Okay. I do want to take a minute to say that it's completely okay and normal for you to feel stressed and confused about student loans. Student loans are a complex, complicated topic, even to people like myself and Jessica who work in this world. So we want to take a moment and validate that it's okay to feel overwhelmed by all of the information and options that are out there, especially with all of the changes that are happening. I'm sure you see news articles and things that are, they just add more complexity to it. So for those of you who may be listening in and not seeing our slides on the screen, right now we have two memes posted. One displays a still image of Andy Dwyer from the show Parks and Rec with the caption saying, "I literally don't know what is happening, and at this point I'm too afraid to ask." And because that show probably ages us a bit, we also included a meme with Joyce Meyer from the show Stranger Things. And the caption says, "Stress level, Winona Ryder in every single scene of Stranger Things." We thought these memes might give a little levity and insight into how we all might be feeling about our student loans and just student loans in general at the moment. So, but I want you to invite you to be fully present in our presentation today and to know that you don't have to absorb everything that we say. As we explained earlier, the slides and the recorded presentation will be available so you can rewatch and review, go back at, as much as needed. We're also going to talk about how you can reach out to us for individual support and questions if you need to. Today's presentation is aimed on giving you the tools to stay up to date on your own student loans and to have a foundational understanding of the student loan landscape as it is today, 9/18/2024. As you may have seen over the last few weeks and months, changes are constantly happening. It's possible that the information that we share today could be outdated next week, but we felt that it is important for us to at least connect with you now to share what we do know, even if we don't have all of the answers to the questions that you might have. So we're in this together. Let's all take a deep breath. And really, we'll just keep going along and we're here to help you navigate this process.
Thank you, Amber. So to get us started, maybe you are in the very beginning of your federal student loan journey, and you may be wondering, how is it that you can even find your federal student loan information? So you can log into studentaid.gov to locate your federal student loan information, including your type of loan, your loan balance, and your student loan servicer. To log in, you will go to the right corner of the page and it will ask you for your federal student aid ID or your FSA ID. This is your username and password. If you don't have one, you can also click to create an account next to the login button. Once you log in, it will bring you to a dashboard that looks like this. And on the right side of that page, you will be able to view your student loan servicer information under My Loan Servicer. If you click on the link under the My Loan Servicer, where it says View More, you will be brought to a page with your servicer's website, phone number, and other contact information like mailing address. It's a good idea for you to view your loan servicer details because while it is uncommon, you may actually have more than one student loan servicer. This is the dashboard that will show you key information about your federal student loans. If you want a comprehensive breakdown of all of your loans, you will want to click on View Details on the right side of My Aid, and it will bring you to a page that will list all the aid that you have received, including both grants and loans. The breakdown of all your loans will include the type of loan you have and your loan balances and interest rates for each individual loan. In addition, if you already have submitted at least one public service loan forgiveness PSLF form and it has already been processed, that detailed page will also show you your PSLF payment counts. Please note, those PSLF payment counts may be currently out of date due to the transition from PSLF, from the PSLF program from OHILA to federal student aid. Moving on to talk about the federal student loan updates, everyone is here to hear about. We'll first touch on the on-ramp period. So the Department of Education recognized that return to repayment would be a difficult time for a lot of borrowers. And because of that, they announced a special period called the on-ramp. This is a period of 12 months that lasted between October 1st, 2023 and September 30th, 2024. During this period, interest will still accrue, but it will not capitalize, meaning it will not be added to your current balance. This on-ramp period will benefit, and it has been benefiting, the most vulnerable borrowers, meaning those who are not able to make payments because late, missed, or partial payments will not be reported to credit bureaus, will not be considered in delinquency or default, and will not be referred to collection agencies. In other words, if you miss the payment during this period, you will not receive some of the more harsh consequences that happen to student loans if you don't make a payment. In short, if you missed the payment or made a late or partial payment since October 1st, 2023 through September 30th, 2024, you will not be considered in delinquency or default during this period. However, if you continue to not make payments after September 30th, 2024, negative reporting information will begin being reported to credit bureaus, and it may, as a result, impact your credit history. You want to make sure that you start making payments in October, and if you cannot make payments, that you reach out to our office or to student loan servicers that hold your loans to discuss your options. Now, it makes sense for us to touch on what will happen after September 30th, 2024, if a borrower continues to not make payments. Basically, until September 30th, 2024, borrowers will be considered in good standing, regardless if they made on-time payments or not. However, from that point forward, after being 90 days late, a borrower is then reported as delinquent, meaning late to credit bureaus, which of course affects your credit. Once a borrower is considered to be 270 days late, which is about 9 months, they then enter what's called default. At this point, a lot of negative consequences can happen. Your wages can be garnished, your tax refund can be withheld, and you may be ineligible for state and federal student aid. Your account is sent to that collection agencies, and you immediately become responsible for the entire unpaid loan balance along with collection. The ultimate goal is to avoid all of these consequences. So if you feel like you may be at risk of being delinquent or default on your student loans after September 30th, 2024, contact your servicer to explain your situation. Communication is essential, so please reach out to your servicer or to us if you become at risk of becoming delinquent or in default. Now, I'll pass it on to Amber so she can tell you more about the Fresh Start program.
So Fresh Start is the other program that's ending at the end of this month. And Fresh Start is a program designed for borrowers who are currently in default in order to get out of default through fast and fairly easy process. So we're going to cover that right now. So Fresh Start is a temporary opportunity, meaning those that can benefit from it should act now. But it is an excellent opportunity for anyone that is in default on their student loans right now. Without Fresh Start, getting out of default is a much more complicated process that requires either making payments for 9 months to rehabilitate the loan or consolidating loans. However, with Fresh Start, you can get out of default in about 10 minutes or less with a quick phone call. This is especially beneficial for those who are in default and maybe want to go back to school, because accessing Fresh Start also restores the ability to access Title IV federal financial aid. This allows folks who were defaulted and unable to access that federal student aid to once again receive grants and possibly additional student loans. So Fresh Start also removes the default record from the borrower's credit report and stops collection attempts. So it's a great program. All right. So to enroll, like I said, it should only take about 10 minutes, depending on the method that you go. There are three different ways that you can use to sign up. One, you can go online. Um, you can call the Department of Education or send a mailed request. And we are going to make these slides available again for the presentation after the fact, so you can also pull the information there. But for going online, you would go to myeddebt.ed.gov and log into your account. That's the easiest option if you know your login. You can call the 1-800 number on the screen. From there, again, that'll be about a 10-minute phone call. They're going to need your information to find your records. And then when you ask why you're calling, right, that you want to get out of default using Fresh Start is what you would say. And then you can also mail your request in, including the information that we've got on the screen, and indicating that you want to use Fresh Start to get your loans back into good standing. If you do send a letter, those letters have to be postmarked before October 1st, 2024. We also have a link on here at the bottom of the slide that has more detail on the Fresh Start program and some options and the links to do it online if you've got loans that are held by the Department of Education. When you get out of default, you'll automatically be put on the standard repayment plan. Most borrowers enrolling in the Fresh Start, roughly about 80%, do choose to apply for an income-driven repayment plan. An income-driven repayment plan, also known as IDR plans, customize your monthly payment based on your income and your household size. About half of borrowers that are on Fresh Start on IDR plans are paying $0 a month, and about 60% of borrowers, Fresh Start borrowers, are paying less than $50 a month. So it can be a really great option if you're worried about the cost of your repayments. You can review your different repayment options, including IDR, using the loan simulator tool on studentaid.gov. And if you decide that you want to sign up for an IDR, right now, you can't apply for an IDR plan until the federal student aid actually finishes processing your Fresh Start enrollment. So that the actual enrollment should take a couple of weeks. So you may have to wait and do your enrollment into Fresh Start first, wait a couple of weeks for your IDR application. The online IDR application right now is not available, and so you would need to submit a manual PDF application for an income-driven repayment application. All right, so what is happening with the IDR account adjustment, or these days they've changed the name of it. Now it's just, I think, payment count adjustment. But we want to give you some updates on that. Okay. And before we go into too much information, I did want to take a minute to explain two different types of forgiveness that are going to be impacted by the payment count adjustment. So we've got the public service loan forgiveness, which is one type of forgiveness, and then we have income-driven repayment forgiveness. So the IDR account adjustment can impact both of these, but we think it's important to know kind of the differences between the two. So PSLF is awarded after a borrower completes 120 qualifying payments, which is 10 years, while working in a public sector position. I recommend watching one of our recorded webinars for a more comprehensive explanation of PSLF. IDR forgiveness is typically awarded after a borrower makes 20 to 25 years of payments while under an income-driven repayment plan. So there's two different areas. For PSLF, you have to be employed in the public sector at least 10 years while making payments to be eligible. For IDR, there's no employment requirement. You just need to remain in an IDR plan for 20 to 25 years, depending on the plan, to be eligible for forgiveness. We're bringing this up again as we talk about the adjustment because some folks get confused and mix up the eligibility for both of these types of programs. Hopefully that helps a little bit to clarify, if we're talking about IDR forgiveness, that's distinct and different from public service loan forgiveness. Second. All right. So now moving on to talk about the IDR payment count adjustment. The Department of Education created the adjustment to try and correct counts for borrowers who previously were unnecessarily steered into forbearances and deferments in the past when they actually could have qualified for an income-driven repayment plan instead and made progress towards forgiveness. So the payment account was a time-limited program. The adjustment is currently being applied to the eligible loans between now and the end of 2024. This adjustment allows certain periods of forbearance and or deferment to convert to IDR payments for borrowers, and specifically for borrowers that had or have 12 or more consecutive months of forbearance, have 36 or more total months of forbearance across their student loan history, months in economic hardship or military deferments after 2013, and periods of deferment before 2013, excluding in-school deferments. Any time spent in repayment will also convert to IDR payments, including payments made before consolidation or payments that were made on other non-IDR plans. But please note that it excludes periods of bankruptcy or default from being counted towards repayment. Any borrowers with loans that have accumulated eligible time in repayment of 20 to 25 years may see automatic forgiveness, even if they're not currently on an income-driven repayment plan, or even if they plan on applying for PSLF. Any additional IDR payments a borrower may get credit for under the adjustment will count towards PSLF if they were employed in a qualifying public sector job or with an employer during that period, and of course certify that employment. Loans that hit the forgiveness threshold, whether that's 240 to 300 qualifying payments for the IDR forgiveness or 120 qualifying payments for PSLF forgiveness, have begun to be forgiven. Some borrowers in this situation have already received forgiveness. However, it's important to note that the IDR forgiveness right now is currently paused because of the SAVE lawsuit, which is impacting IDR. So we'll explain a little bit more about that towards the end of the presentation. Or actually, no, sorry, it's the next thing. All right. You should be able to see PSLF payment counts on the studentaid.gov website when you're logged in. If you've already submitted and have completed and processed one PSLF form, final PSLF credits may not be applied until later in 2024, as FSA is still making updates since the recent transition and of course the payment count adjustment. This means that your count may show an inaccurate number of counts right now until the systems are all caught up. IDR payment counts are not available on studentaid.gov. Similar to PSLF, final IDR payments may not be applied for some time until later in 2024. While most people will get the payment count adjustment automatically if it's eligible or applicable to them, borrowers with commercially held FFEL, Perkins, and HEAL loans needed to have consolidated by June 30th to benefit. If you still have any FFEL, Perkins, or HEAL loans and you want to talk about what options you have now, please do reach out to our office. Jessica will post the link with how you can reach out to us. And I'm going to go ahead and pass it back to Jessica to talk more about the SAVE lawsuit, which I'm sure many of you are wanting to hear about. Oh, Jessica, you are muted.
I was just saying, can you actually post the link? Because I'm just all over the place with trying to the link on how to contact.
I got it.
Thank you. Sorry. It's hard when I have two screens and three different things I have to look at. So thank you everybody for your grace and Amber for your help. All right. So as many of you may have heard on the news, the Saving on a Valuable Education, the SAVE plan is currently blocked. And because we don't want to assume that everybody in the call knows what the SAVE plan is, we just want to give you a little bit of an overview of what it is, right? So the SAVE plan is an income-driven repayment plan, an IDR plan. So it bases your monthly payment on your income and family size. SAVE is the newest, most generous of the IDR plans that Federal Student Aid have made available to date. The SAFE plan lowers payments for almost all borrowers compared to other IDR plans because your payments are based on a smaller portion of your family's adjusted gross income. And the SAFE plan has a very good interest benefit. So if you make your full monthly payment, but it's not enough to cover the accrued monthly interest, the government covers the rest of your interest that is accrued in that month. This means that the SAFE plan prevents your balance from growing due to unpaid interest. And the SAFE plan also had a provision that forgives borrowers who originally borrowed $12,000 or less after as few as 10 years in repayment. Now, there are certain attorney generals around the country that thought servicers like Mohila were being harmed by the SAFE plan. So the two lawsuits, one in Missouri and another one in Kansas, were filed to block the SAFE plan. These cases have requested that the SAFE plan be paused until the lawsuit is resolved. And neither case has been argued yet, meaning no decision has been reached whether SAFE will be allowed to continue at this time. However, as a result of these lawsuits, SAFE was temporarily blocked and was paused on July 18, 2024. Now, what does this mean for you as a borrower? If you are enrolled in the SAFE program, you should by now be on a forbearance because the court order is preventing the Department of Education from offering the SAFE plan while the lawsuit continues. Interest will not accrue on this forbearance. However, time spent in this forbearance does not count for public service loan forgiveness, PSLF, or income-driven repayment, IDR, plan forgiveness. Once again, the time spent on this forbearance will not count towards PSLF or IDR forgiveness. Borrowers will be in this forbearance until the legal situation changes or until servicers are able to send bills to borrowers at an appropriate monthly payment amount. There is currently no timeline, as in we don't know how long this is going to take to be resolved, okay? Now, there have been also several other impacts from the SAFE lawsuit, and I'm just gonna cover them for you. The online IDR and consolidation loan applications on studentaid.gov are temporarily not available. The IDR application processing, so if you were to submit an IDR application today, has also been temporarily paused because servicers don't have a way to correctly process those applications at this time. Borrowers should expect a lengthy delay in processing of applications, especially for borrowers that are applying to get into the SAFE plan. And once again, there is no timeline for how long it will take for those applications to be processed for people that are applying for IDR at this point in time. IDR forgiveness has also been paused, right? And the terms of the SAFE plan and other IDR plans are subject to the outcome of the ongoing litigation, meaning the SAFE plan and other IDR plans could be impacted depending on the results of the lawsuit. And borrowers should check out the page that we have on this link for updates, right? Because this information is valid as of today, but this is something that's evolving, right? It could be that tomorrow something else could change. So I will have Amber post the link to this to the Federal Student Aid webpage that talks about the SAFE court actions so that you can monitor any changes that might come in the future. Now, we know that this is not good news for a lot of borrowers. So we're going to go over some of the options you have available if you're enrolled into the SAFE plan. However, we want you to keep in mind a few things. Our office, meaning Amber and I, cannot tell you what to do. We can only explain what options you have available. It's important for you to know that millions of borrowers across the country are facing the same issues that you're facing. So you're not alone in this predicament, right? Though we know it is frustrating. These options have risks and timeframes that you have no control over. And these risks and timeframes, as you probably have thought, our office also has no control over, right? So keep that in mind. And no matter what your choice ends up being, be patient. It may take some time for the lawsuit to be resolved. and things are extra slow now at the servicers. I'll go ahead and pass it back to Amber.
All right, so we've kind of broken down some situations that you might find yourselves in based on what's happening with the SAVE lawsuits. So for this example, I'm enrolled in SAVE and I'm pursuing PSLF. What are my options right now to receive PSLF credit, or just what are my options in general? So there's three options here. The first is do nothing, wait to see what happens with SAVE, and you would just stay on the SAVE forbearance. Eventually, you could consider requesting the PSLF buyback for the months spent in this forbearance. Second option, submit a PDF application to enroll in the Income-Based Repayment Plan, or IBR plan, if you're eligible for it. Again, this is one of the income-driven repayment plans, but specifically it's the income-based repayment plan. You can use the loan simulator on studentaid.gov to find out your eligibility. If you submit the application, you would be placed in a 60-day processing forbearance. Now that 60-day processing forbearance would count towards PSLF. If after 60 days your application has not yet been processed, they would then place you in the zero interest forbearance that would not count towards PSLF. And again, we don't know how long it's going to take for those to be processed. The third option you would have is to switch to the 10-year standard repayment plan. Payments under the 10-year standard repayment plan count towards PSLF. And again, that's the 10-year standard repayment plan. Each of these options have some advantages and drawbacks that you'll need to consider what might be best for your specific situation. So if you do nothing right now, that doesn't require any action from you. However, the downside is that you might need to go through the PSLF buyback process once you have 120 months of qualifying employment later down the road. If you choose to submit a PDF application, the pro is because you would be placed in that processing forbearance for 60 days, you'd have continued PSLF eligibility for those 2 months or 60 days. The downside, not all borrowers might be eligible for IBR. It might increase your monthly payment, and then you still might return to the non-PSLF eligible forbearance after those 60 days. With switching to the 10-year standard repayment plan, again, a pro is continued eligibility for PSLF. The con would be that the monthly payments are often unaffordable to most borrowers. Okay. Now, a slightly different situation, if you are enrolled in SAVE and pursuing IDR forgiveness, right? So not PSLF, but IDR forgiveness, what are your options? So first option, you could do nothing again and wait to see what happens with SAVE. Second option, submitting a PDF application to enroll in the income-based repayment plan. Same sort of thing where you can use the loan simulator to see if you're eligible for it. You'd be placed in a 60-day processing forbearance that would count towards IDR. After 60 days, if that's not been processed, you would be placed into the zero interest forbearance that does not count towards IDR. And the pros and cons for that are the same as with the situation with PSLF. Okay. All right. So now if you want to enroll in SAVE or another IDR plan, what are your options? Okay. So if you're not already enrolled in an IDR plan or you want to switch IDR plans, you can apply for the IDR plan by submitting a PDF application. Currently, borrowers can request to enroll in either SAVE or the income-based repayment plan. Borrowers with consolidated loans that repaid a Parent Plus loan may still enroll into the income contingent repayment plan. As a part of this application, you will need to include documentation of your income. Once you've gathered your documentation and completed the application, you would visit your servicer's website and upload your IDR application related documents. You also can mail or fax your materials. All right. So if you want to consolidate your loans, what options do you have? You can apply to consolidate by submitting a PDF application. You would print your completed consolidation application and mail it to the servicer that you would like to consolidate with. If you're consolidating for the purposes of IDR, you must submit a consolidation application and an IDR application to your consolidation servicer. So you'd also see the previous slide with that information. Please be aware, consolidating your loans at this time may lead you to lose some IDR or PSLF credit, as only a weighted average of payments may be applied to the new consolidation loan. So that's something to be conscientious of as you're looking at your options. Okay. I know we've covered a lot of material, but there's just a few other items to be aware of before we get to our Q&A section. There have been a lot of important changes recently in how the PSLF program will be managed. While historically PSLF has been managed by a single servicer, such as FedLoan and more recently Mohila, as of May 1st, 2024, the PSLF program is no longer managed through a designated servicer. Federal Student Aid, or FSA, will fully manage these programs through the studentaid.gov. You can now submit your PSLF forms on studentaid.gov, track your progress, and also get support for these programs through FSA's contact centers. There was a processing pause for PSLF forms from May to June 2024. Forms that were submitted during this pause are still being processed, and it may take some time for your PSLF payment counts to be updated. This is also true for forms that were submitted prior to the pause and may not be processed until later in 2024. So this may be another instance of you may need to be patient and wait for those updates to get processed and go through. And now I'm going to hand it off to Jessica to give you a little bit more information on the other item that we were hoping to talk about, which is the Plan B student loan debt relief.
Thank you. Thank you, Amber. I just wanted to let everybody know, because we have a lot of PSLF questions, right, on the Q&A, I can already tell. We did just post a link on the chat, which gives you an overview on how you can manage your PSLF progress on the studentaid.gov website. And I think for a lot of the questions that people are asking about how to look up whether a form has been processed, how to check PSLF qualifying payments, like a lot of that information is on that article. So I recommend that folks take a look at that after the presentation, because it might be very helpful to them. All right. So what about the new alternative path to forgiveness? So today we were really hoping to cover more information with you about the new student debt relief that was supposed to be announced later this month by the Department of Education. But sadly, on September 5th, 2024, the U.S. District Court of the Southern District of Georgia issued a temporary restraining order on the proposed student loan debt relief regulations. So we will not be covering the information about this debt relief until the results of this lawsuit become clearer. However, I do want to share with you, if you want to learn more about what this is and also just be updated when things regarding this debt relief become available, I would recommend that you review information about the restraining order, as well as updates on the Federal Student Loan Debt Relief website. And Amber's going to share that link with you in the chat right now. All right. So now we'll go over some resources and information on how you can get help with your student loans. So if you want to stay updated on all student loan related things, our office continues to provide Washington State borrowers webinars like this one, discussing changes to student loan debt happening in 2024 and beyond. Keep an eye out on both of our websites the student loan advocacy webpage and our PSLF webpage for resource updates and also upcoming webinars related to student loan debt. I'll go ahead and have Amber post those links in the chat as well, in case you want to take a look at those two web pages. And then finally, you also have the option to submit a question or a complaint to our office. Borrowers can ask questions about things like public service loan forgiveness, income-driven repayment plans, delinquency and default, deferment or forbearance, other types of loan forgiveness and discharges that maybe we didn't talk about today, right? As well as consolidation and any other student loan question. I'll have Amber once again post the link to our questions and complaint portal in case you want to submit a question directly to our office, or maybe you have a complaint about your student loan servicer. And thank you so much for the opportunity to present to you today. We know that there's a lot of confusion going on, so we're definitely going to take a good amount of time to answer the questions that are in the Q&A. We do ask you, however, before we get started with our Q&A session, that you please fill out a survey to help us continue providing resources for Washington State student loan borrowers. We have the QR code on the slide, so if you're tax savvy and you know how to use your phone to scan a QR code, you can get access to the survey there. And or I'm also going to have Amber post the link to that on the chat. So it really helps us find out, one, how we're doing, right? And what other information can be helpful to bring to you. So if you could take a moment to complete that survey, we would really, really appreciate it. Now, in addition to that, we want to take a moment and submit any questions that you may have, and or upvote the questions that you would like to hear the answer to. So we do have quite a lot of time. We have about 40 minutes, right, that we're going to be able to devote to Q&A. But it's very rare that we're able to answer every single borrower question, right, Amber? We try our best, but we just typically don't have enough time to go over everybody's questions. So if somebody else already submitted a question, right, there should be a thumbs up option that you can thumb up. We're gonna try to prioritize the questions that get more upvotes, right? So if you can vote a question that you really want to hear the answer to, that will help us prioritize, right, what more people want to hear about. So I'm gonna go ahead and just go back real quick to the survey, because this is also something else that we want to make sure that people go through. And then I think, Amber, if you're ready, we can start taking some questions from the Q&A.
Yes, I'm ready. All right, so I show our first question here. How will I know when my PSLF application has been processed and approved? That is a great question. You do get a letter, right? A letter that actually says, congratulations, you've received your public service loan forgiveness. And Jessica, do you know if it's sent electronically and through the mail, or is it just through the mail?
So I guess this question is a little bit more tricky, right? Because I don't know if they're asking about forgiveness being approved or just a form being approved, right? Because those are two different things. They can be one and the same, but they can mean different things, right? So I think we need to talk about two situations, right? Like somebody submitted a PSLF form and maybe they don't have 120 qualifying payments yet, right? What happens in that case? And then if they are already eligible for forgiveness because they've met all the requirements, what happens then? So sorry for derailing you from
No, that's a good point, because I just read it as assuming when you've hit your 120, but that's a completely valid, yes, there are a couple of different situations. Yeah, so if you're just submitting your yearly PSLF form to have your payment counts updated, right? How do you know it's kind of processed and approved? So if you use the PSLF help tool through your studentaid.gov, that actually has a tracker, so you can go into your activity in your studentaid.gov, and you can actually see, okay, has your employer signed it yet? Is it still in review? Once it's actually reviewed and approved, you should also see then a corresponding update to your PSLF payment counts in there, and it should also then show up on your employment certification. So that link, oh yes, thank you, Jessica, the how to manage your PSLF on your studentaid.gov, that link that Jessica just posted, that gives you kind of a tutorial on how to access all of the PSLF information in your studentaid.gov, and that's where you would start to see some of those changes if your form is approved.
Perfect. And then like Amber said, right, if you are eligible for forgiveness, right, if you apply in your application is processed and you're eligible for forgiveness, one thing that you need to know is that because the program has just finished transferring to FSA, the way that they do things is not going to be exactly the way that Mohila did things, right? My understanding is that you should receive an email, right, letting you know they are eligible for forgiveness. But again, I'm not 100% sure because technically, since the transition, as far as I'm aware, they haven't forgiven any loans yet. So it's something that we're kind of learning as they're implementing the program. So my suggestion would be is to keep going to your studentaid.gov account for updates, right? Because that probably will give you an indication at this point in time whether the loans have been forgiven or not. So. And also be aware that it could be that the information that's available there is not updated because of the transition, right? Because they're still updating accounts. All right, so the next question that was most upvoted, it says, at some point, I would like to hear the details about the buyback program, how it works and who may qualify criteria. So the buyback program is a fairly new program, right, that specifically helps people that may have had ineligible periods of forbearance or deferment be able to buy back those months, right, meaning submit a monthly payment for those months to get those months to count towards PSLF, right? The criteria for who qualifies for buyback is very intricate, right? And we're not really prepared to discuss that today. My recommendation to you, we have already posted a link that really goes over that criteria in detail, right? So my recommendation to you is to review that link, right? And if you have any questions, any follow-up questions after you review that link, then you can reach out to our office so that we can answer those questions. For the safe forbearance, right? Like the people that are in the safe forbearance, this is actually an example of a type of forbearance that you might be eligible to submit buyback for, right? Because like, you know, you're in this forbearance, you don't have a way to get it to count. And also, you know, there's nothing that you can do, right, to get that month to count at this point in time if you stay in the safe plan. So that's definitely one example. So like if you're wondering, can I use buyback to eventually get credit for the safe forbearance? The answer is yes, right? I would recommend that you review that link so you can get more details on how the program works and also what the criteria is to qualify.
All right, so our next question, for annual PSLF forms, do I need to have my former employers re-sign and certify every year, or do I only need to include updated information from my current employer on my certification form? So this is a great question. If you have already certified a prior employment, or you've already submitted a form for the entire period that you worked there that would be eligible, and already showing up on your employment certification, you don't need to recertify if you're not working there any longer, if you already have that certification in place. If you are working with a public service employer and you're recertifying every year, yes, it's just your current employer. Basically, what you're telling the Department of Education is, okay, since my last PSLF form, I'm still working here, and you're letting them know up to the date that the form is signed that you're still working for that employer so that they can then go through and review those months for your PSLF eligibility.
Thanks, Amber. So somebody said, I'm worried that these delays will pile up and then the administration will change and the Department of Education will not process PSLF anymore. So valid fear, right? Anonymous attendee. One thing that I have to say to you is that public service loan forgiveness is not a program that can just be eradicated from day to night, right? Public service loan forgiveness was established by Congress in 2007, right? and was written into law by Congress. Therefore, in order for PSLF to no longer exist and you no longer be eligible for it, a couple of things would need to happen, right? Congress, not the president or any administration, right, would have to pass a law basically taking away that program. And even if Congress, which again, in my personal opinion, would be unlikely that they would pass a law that gets the program out. Most likely, if you're already on the program, you would still continue to be eligible because you'd be kind of like grandfathered in, right, into the program. So while I understand your fears, just know that a change in administration by itself, like a president cannot by themselves do away with the PSLF program. And even if Congress were to take action to do away with the PSLF program, you would likely still be eligible because you're already enrolled into the program. And under your promissory notes, right, like when we sign to take out loans nowadays, it says that you are eligible for this program. So hopefully this help ease some of your fears that the program will not go away with the snap of a finger.
And I will add too that PSLF is not directly part of the litigation that's happening right now with SAVE. While that litigation could impact PSLF in an indirect way, maybe in terms of your access to what income-driven repayment plans you have available to you, it doesn't impact the actual program, the PSLF program, and its availability. All right, so this next question, I'm on SAVE and have continued to make monthly payments during the forbearance. Will those payments count towards PSLF once the SAVE pause is lifted? I'm going to attempt to answer this one, Jessica, and if I misspeak, please correct me. So if you're making payments while you're in forbearance, those months are not going to automatically count towards PSLF once the forbearance is lifted, because in order for those months to count, you had to have a payment due. So if you're making payments, it's not going to make that month eligible because you didn't have a payment due. I don't know how the servicer, my understanding is that they're going to apply payments made during the forbearance to future payments, but I don't know precisely how that works. But the only way to get these months to account towards PSLF would be, right, as we talked about before, potentially using the PSLF buyback if you stay in the forbearance and don't make payments, or switching either to the standard 10-year repayment plan or to the income-based repayment plan.
And Amber, you were correct, right? The payments that you're making now will eventually be applied to future payments, right? So let's just pretend that in January, right, a decision is made, and in January you'll go back to repayment. The payment that you made in, let's say, August will be your servicer is gonna get that payment and they're gonna apply to your January payment, but it's not gonna make the August payment count. If you are on a forbearance, right, typically that forbearance does not count. And if you're in the SAVE forbearance specifically, it's not just because you're submitting a payment, it's not going to make that month count. So hopefully that clarifies that question. All right, so how can you see your forbearance or deferment history on the studentaid.gov website? You have to do a little bit of digging to be able to find that information, but it's available there. So.
And I would say the only downside is it doesn't tell you what type of forbearance or deferment it is. It'll just show whether you were in forbearance or deferment and just no other detail. And also keep in mind, when you're looking at it, you look at it by each loan individually at a time. And so if you consolidated loans, your consolidated loan might only have a more recent history, and you might have to go back and look at your older loans in there to see the longer history. All right, next question. My student loans are not in the SAVE program anymore due to the lawsuit, and now it's forbearance. I called studentaid.gov to see what is going on, and the lady said no interest on the loans, but it doesn't count towards PSLF. I'm confused about all these changes going on. So yes, that that information is accurate, right? So if you were on save, you were automatically moved into this forbearance that is no interest is accruing while on this forbearance, but the forbearance is not counting towards PSLF. In order to get months to count towards PSLF, again, later down the road, if you stay in the forbearance, you can try to utilize the PSLF buyback or make, choose one of the other options, which would be applying for the standard 10-year repayment plan or the income-based repayment plan, and pursuing those routes. So hopefully our slides kind of covering that situation maybe helped to address this question maybe already in the presentation, but I'd recommend when we do post the slides to go back and take a look at those.
And one thing that I will say, right, if you signed up for the SAFE program and you were enrolled into the SAFE program, you technically still on the SAFE program during the forbearance, right? It doesn't mean that you're not on the SAFE plan. You are on the SAFE plan. It's just that your account is in a forbearance, right? So I just want to make that clear because the person said that it sounded like the person told them that they were no longer into the SAFE plan, right? If you were able to enroll prior to the pause, you're still on the SAFE plan. It's just that your account is on the forbearance. So just wanted to make that clear. All right, so I consolidated and applied for IDR in April. My loans are consolidated, but they put me on the standard repayment plan instead of IDR. Is it true that the standard repayment plan is not eligible for PSLF? So I'm going to stop here and answer that part of the question first. If you consolidated your loans, you most likely are not on what's called the 10-year standard repayment plan. You're likely on the 30-year standard repayment plan, right, which is available for consolidated loans. So if you are on the 30-year standard repayment plan, you're correct. That repayment plan is not eligible for PSLF. So just wanted to make that clear. The studentaid.gov website says that my IDR application is still in review. Should I reapply or are they still reviewing my IDR application? I called studentaid.gov and the person I talked to said that my April to September payments will count towards PSLF, but this isn't consistent with the other information on their website. So the person on studentaid.gov was correct that the months from April to September will count, and that's because of the IDR account adjustment, right? So remember how we talked about because of the adjustment that's happening likely by the end of September. We don't know exactly when it's going to happen. That's the reality. Like FSA hasn't told us exactly when it's going to happen, but we're assuming it's going to happen by the end of September, right? That adjustment is going to allow for payments that were made in non-eligible repayment plans to count. But after September, she's correct. If you stay on that 30-year standard repayment plan, you're not going to continue accruing PSLF qualifying payments, right? So we did have a page. Let me see if I can go back to that slide. We had a slide that specifically talked about people that might be in your situation, right? We know that you already applied for IDR, right? When you consolidated that the application is pending. But if you know that you want to get into an IDR plan anyway, right, then you might want to consider just going ahead and submitting another IDR application just so that you can be put into that 60-day forbearance that's going to count towards PSLF. And then hopefully, if it takes longer, you might be in a forbearance longer that doesn't count. But this might be a good option for somebody in your situation that is basically not in a PSLF eligible plan and still wants to apply for IDR, right?
All right, so our next question from Jennifer, student aid / Mohila said income-based plan changes are on hold. So my PSLF or my PDF application to change to IBR as well as getting the processing forbearance isn't going to be processed until the hold is lifted. They also said the standard plan doesn't count for PSLF. Could you please verify / clarify both of these? So I'll reiterate what Jessica said. So the 10-year standard repayment plan counts for PSLF, but if you have consolidated loans and they put you in the 30-year standard repayment plan, that does not count towards PSLF. So that's addressing that second half of the question. The first half of the question, so yes, the IDR application processing right now is on hold. You can still submit your applications to your servicers, but they're not processing them yet at the moment. I don't think they've made clear whether or not that processing forbearance when you submit the application, if that's going to start when they receive it, or if it's going to start once they start the actual processing of it. That distinction has not been made clear as far as I understand.
It should be backdated to when the date that you applied, Amber. Just letting you know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
All
Oh,
right. So, what is the worst case scenario if the courts don't allow the safe plan to continue? I don't know. That's the answer, right? This is what we're trying to get back to when we were talking about like we don't have all the answers. This is definitely one of those things that we don't know all the answers, right? We have to wait until the case unfolds and then we see what happens. I don't know what the worst case scenario is, and I'm sorry.
do you have to submit a new PSLF certificate every year for all government agencies you've worked for or just your current employer? So the recertifying every year is for your current employer. However, if you have worked for multiple government agencies, you will want to make sure that you've submitted separate PSLF forms for each of those agencies. Just because you work for a state employer does not mean that they'll be able to certify all of your state employment. But if you have already certified your prior employment at the other state government agencies or other government agencies, then you wouldn't need to resubmit that again unless you had further employment that you didn't already certify.
Are there any legal class action lawsuits against the people messing this up for us? How can we join on those lawsuits if they exist? The first thing I'm going to say is that we're not lawyers and we cannot give anybody in this call legal advice, right? So that's the first thing that I'm going to say, so that you all know this is not legal advice. This is not financial advice. We're just here as advocates giving you the best of our knowledge regarding this topic, but we're not giving anybody legal or financial advice, okay? So with that being said, I am not aware of any legal or class action lawsuits that are currently happening regarding this. If you are interested in learning about, potential lawsuits that could be happening, I would suggest checking out the Student Borrower Protection Center website, right? If there is one resource that maybe would make that information available to folks, it would be them. But again, we're not lawyers and we're not giving legal advice. So thank you.
All right, so this next question, how is it my loan is allowed to be transferred 3 times between servicers, for servicers to change platforms on me twice, and for the service to go continually downwards? They reset my PSLF account twice and my loan payments twice, acting like I never paid them. And if I hadn't had the paperwork proving otherwise, I'd be at zero again. How can this be legal? So in this instance, I think the short answer is, as far as contracts with the federal government goes, right? The federal government is contracting with the servicers. If they change their contracts from one servicer to another, that's, your loan then goes with it, right? The department technically owns your loan, and the servicer is the one that's just servicing on behalf of the Department of Education. As far as platform transitions go, those just, those are for the servicers, updating their systems and their securities and things like that. It's not a great system. Jessica and I both can attest that the system has many problems and the servicers are not, there's a lot of just problems that exist within the servicers and between the servicers. The best that we can do is just try to help you navigate the system. And the best you can do is also to advocate for yourself where you can. So I don't have any answers for you, I guess, really. And other than saying, we empathize with your experience, and unfortunately, others have had similar experiences as well. And please do submit a individual complaint or question to our office, and we'll see if we can try to help you individually.
All right, so I consolidated my loans based on advice from this group and chose the safe plan with projected payments of $100, and the bill came for $700. Definitely sticker shock. Is this occurring because of all the legal issues with safe plan? How should I proceed? So again, without looking at your specific circumstances, it's hard for me to know why this might be happening. It is possible that the reason why it's happening is because you consolidated your loans and your servicer didn't have enough time to process your safe application, right? In order to be able to put you into the safe plan. And that's the reason why you got this really big bill. So in your situation, right, if you still know that you want to enroll into the safe plan or another income driven repayment plan, right, it might be a good idea to go ahead and resubmit that manual PDF application for your IDR to make sure that, one, you don't continue having to make that really big $700 payment that you might not be able to afford, right? And then two, to put you on the pipeline to eventually get into a more affordable repayment plan that qualifies for PSLF eventually. So I'm assuming you were asking this because of PSLF. I'm not sure, or maybe IDR, right? That maybe you just want to be an IDR. So that would probably be what my guidance would be for somebody in your situation that cannot afford that $700 plan and knows they want to be in an income-driven repayment plan eventually.
All right. So I'm working for a nonprofit right now. If I change jobs at any point, will I need to stay with the nonprofit to keep my PSLF status? Will that change after a loan is forgiven? So your employment, your public service employment for PSLF does not have to be consecutive. So if you work for a qualifying employer now, and let's say you accumulate maybe 24 qualifying payments, you still have those 24 qualifying payments and they'll still exist, even if maybe you then work the next 2 years at a for-profit employer. And then at that point, go back to public service, and whether that's nonprofit or government work. So in order to actually receive PSLF, though, you would have to have a cumulative total of that 120 payments while working for a qualified employer. It's just that they don't have to be consecutive. Once your loan is forgiven, you do not have to stay in public service. We do recommend, though, if you have to be employed in public service at the time that you apply to get that forgiveness. We recommend staying in that employment until you receive the forgiveness, just to be certain. And then if you have other plans at that point, to then make those plans happen at that point.
But the short answer is, if you stop working in the public sector, you stop accruing qualifying payments. You don't lose credit for what you got, but in order to continue accruing, you would have to stay in the public sector. So I don't know whether to wait to see the outcome of the court decision for the safe plan or to choose another plan. Again, we're in the same boat as you, right? There's pros and cons to each decision, right? And unfortunately, we cannot make that decision for you. Even if you were to submit a question to our office, we would only be able to provide you with general guidance, right? Like, we can never tell people X, Y, and Z is what you should do, right? We're never going to do that. So like Amber answered earlier, my recommendation would be for you to review our slides and go over the options and try to see the pros and cons for yourself, and then choose the path that makes the most sense for you.
All right. Can you make a lump payment that equals 10 years worth of payments? For example, payment is $100 a month times 12 times 10 equals lump payment. So the answer is no. If you are pursuing public service loan forgiveness, it's 10 years of qualifying payments. And a qualifying payment is the right payment plan in a month that you're employed by a qualifying employer where you make that payment. And so you can't pay for the 10 years up front, because the part of the requirement is that you're spending 10 years working in public service.
All right, so my PSLF payment count went way up in the last couple of years due to changes in how counts are calculated, probably because of the adjustment, by the way, just letting you know. That is a good thing. Thanks to those changes, I now have less than 10 months to go for PSLF. Yay! As long as I stay a state employee, is my remaining monthly payment count set in stone? No, it's not. It depends on if you are in an income-driven repayment plan, right? If you have to recertify before those 10 months are up, you might your monthly payment might change, right? So it depends on what repayment plan you're under is the answer. Or is there a risk that my current payment count being reduced due to the levels of legal efforts? No, I don't. There's no way that your counts could be reduced because of what's happening, right? Um, um, and sorry, I was confused by this question. So your payment counts are not going away. The payment counts that you have right now should stay there regardless of what's happening in the legal world right now, right? I can't speak to things that I do not know about, lawsuits that may happen in the future. Like I can't speak to those. I can say that what's currently happening, right, does not impact the PSLF payment counts that you currently have. So sorry about the confusion. And then before Amber answers the next question, I just remind folks that we only have about 14 minutes to go, right? In this Q&A, and we still have about 44 open questions. Like I said in the beginning, we're not going to have enough time, right, to go over each one of these questions. So I just want to remind folks to please go into the questions that are already submitted and upvote the ones that you want us to answer, right? Because like I said, unfortunately, we're not going to be able to go over every single question.
So the next question, I'm not sure I fully understand this one. My student loan is in forbearance right now due to the SAVE program being the lawsuit. I need to check to see if my previous employer qualifies for loan forgiveness. Is that process on hold too on student.gov? Oh, if this is referring to the PSLF help tool and the PSLF form processing, that is not on hold. So those are still being processed. It's the one thing that hasn't really been affected. So if you are going into to try to submit prior employment for certification, you should still be able to use the help tool and submit that for your employer for signature and for it to get processed.
All right, Rachel. So does the IDR manual application have to be submitted via mail or can it be uploaded online? It can be uploaded online on your servicer's website, right? It does not have to be submitted via mail. And is this submitted to the loan servicer or student.gov on your the loan servicer's website? Amber, can you please find the link that really outlines like all the steps for this and post it in the chat? So Rachel,
Yeah.
we're gonna go ahead and post it in the chat, the step-by-step instructions on how you do this, just so that there is no confusion. But yes, you can upload it online. You have to upload it to the loan servicer's website. The one thing that I have to remind people, right, is that if you are currently on the SAVE plan, and you don't have consolidated Parent Plus loans, the only other income-driven repayment plan that's available is the income-based repayment plan. Not everybody is eligible for the income-based repayment plan, right? So my recommendation to you is if you're trying to switch from the SAVE to the income-based repayment plan, that you use what's called the loan simulator tool on the student.gov website, and I'm going to have Amber post the link to that as well, to check if you're eligible for IBR, right? Because not everybody is, unlike SAVE, not everybody is eligible for IBR, right? So you don't want to necessarily apply without knowing whether you're eligible, because then you might just be potentially wasting your time. So make sure that you check your eligibility for IBR before switching from SAVE to IBR.
All right. So the next question, how long will the buyback process be available? Like if it will be over 5 years until I get to 120 monthly payments, will this option still be available? So the shorter answer is we don't have a crystal ball to be able to see that far out into the future. But the buyback process was established as a part of the new PSLF final regulations last year. And so it is like it's now written into the regulation and has not yet been challenged. I don't know if it will be, but there's nothing at the moment that would say that it's not going to be available. I guess my answer to that.
All right, so you can submit an IDR app right now, according to Mohila. I don't know who you spoke with at Mohila. They're wrong. You can submit an IDR application for the income-based repayment plan program. The issue is they don't know how long it's going to take for them to actually process that application, right? So you can apply using a manual application. Already, we put instructions on how you can do that from the studentaid.gov website, right? The problem, the issue that the servicers have right now is that they cannot process your application. And there is no timeline for how long it's going to take for them to process your application, right? But you can still apply if you want to switch into the income-based repayment plan.
All right. So how do we know if we are enrolled in PSLF or IDR forgiveness? So you can track your progress for managing your PSLF through your studentaid.gov. If you've submitted a PSLF form to certify employment, it's been evaluated, it'll either has been or will be evaluated for whether that employment is going to result in eligible payments. Jessica just posted how to manage your PSLF progress link. There's not right now a tracking tool for IDR forgiveness that we're hoping at the end of the payment count adjustment will be available on your studentaid.gov, but right now there's no way to track that, as far as being enrolled, really, if you're in an IDR plan, at some point you could then potentially be eligible for forgiveness if you can maintain and continue to be in IDR plans.
All right, so an anonymous attendee with 3 thumbs up say, I'm on SAVE, but I haven't been put in forbearance and still receiving monthly statements on an amount due. Please submit a complaint to our office yesterday, right? If you are on the SAVE plan, you should now be on a forbearance and you should not be receiving bills anymore, right? So submit a complaint to our office. I'm going to have Ember post the link to how you can submit a complaint again in the chat. But if you're still receiving bills and you're in the SAVE plan, that shouldn't be happening. And basically that needs to stop. So if we need to make sure that you're not in that situation at this point in time.
And I'll add to that too that you may also want to look at like if how do I say this? Even if you are in forbearance, it's possible that servicers are still pulling your auto payment. So that would be something to take a look at as well, is whether or not your status still shows in forbearance and if they're just pulling your auto pay every month. All right. So next question that pops up here with 2 votes. I made my last required PSLF payment in May, but since Mohila is transitioning, I have continued to make payments. Should I continue to make extra payments? How long should I do this? Do I have any other options? So if your studentaid.gov account right now, if you go in and look at your PSLF payment counts, if it shows 120, you can submit a new PSLF form using the help tool. There's going to be a spot that indicates that you say that, yes, I believe I've hit 120. Please put me in administrative forbearance while this is processed. And then submit that to then hopefully be moved into forbearance so that you're not making payments. If your studentaid.gov shows that you're not quite there yet and it's just waiting to be updated, you can submit a manual PDF form of the PSLF form to FSA with that option check marked to request to be in the administrative forbearance. Any payments that you do make, when you go through and you receive forgiveness, and they date that forgiveness back, and so if you've made payments beyond when the forgiveness is dated, you would eventually receive a refund of those overpayments. So some folks choose to just keep making payments to be on the safe side. If they're not sure that they've officially hit 120, other folks opt to try to get the administrative forbearance. We can't tell you one way or the other what's better, but you do have both of those options.
And if you get lost on that, you can also submit a complaint, like a question to us, right? And we can kind of guide you through those steps just in case, because it's a lot of information that Amber just shared. So if you're still not sure what your options are, feel free to submit a question or complaint to us. Do we need to still be doing our annual PSLF recertification process right now with all these processing holds? The answer is yes. There's no reason why you shouldn't be submitting your annual PSLF form. There's technically no hold in the actual processing of the applications. There's more of a backlog, right, that was caused by all of the applications that were submitted prior to the transition. So the PSLF applications that are submitted now should still be getting processed. So no reason why to not recertify. Go ahead and continue recertifying.
All right. So if we apply to IDR now due to the current issues with SAVE, can we change back to SAVE when everything is decided if it's still available? So it sounds like you're talking about if you submit an IDR application to switch over to IBR, income-based repayment. Theoretically, if SAVE is still around after the lawsuit's resolved, I don't see why you couldn't change back into SAVE, as far as I'm aware.
Do I have to recertify my income every year on PSLF? If so, when do I do this if I'm on forbearance? So you have to recertify your income every year if you're in an income-driven repayment plan, like the SAVE plan or the income-based repayment plan, right? Which is typically the plan that you want to be on if you are under pursuing public service loan forgiveness, right? If you are on the SAVE forbearance because you're in the SAVE plan, right, and because of the lawsuit, you don't have to recertify your income right now, right? And you're not going to have to recertify your income until the lawsuit is decided. So the short answer is if you're on SAVE, don't worry about recertifying right now until the forbearance is done and you hear more information from your servicer. And two, you should hear from your servicer once your annual recertification for income-driven repayment is due, right? So they should be sending a reminder to you, but telling you to recertify once that deadline approaches.
All right. So this anonymous person, I'm confused. I thought payments were paused for another year, but would not count towards PSLF, nor require interest. So now we have to pay beginning October 1st. So there's no pause of payments for another year. What I think you're referring to is the administrative forbearance if you were on the SAVE plan or you're on the SAVE plan. That is what's causing there to be no payments due, no interest acquired, but not counting towards PSLF. So it's not that it's paused for any amount of time. It's that for the moment during the court case, the administrative forbearance is in place.
All right, so how will I know if I am in default? Will the studentnamed.gov account tell you you're in default? Yes, you should be able to tell in your studentnamed.gov account whether you're in default. If you are in your studentnamed.gov account, there should also be information from your servicer, right? And you can also call your servicer and ask that information if you're not 100% sure on what you're seeing at the studentnamed.gov account, or you can also reach out to us and we can help you find out that information. So, but if you think you might be in default, you definitely want to make sure that you confirm that information before September 30th, right? Because if you are in default, you want to sign up for the Fresh Start program that we talked about earlier, right? Before that date. So if you think you might be in default, you might want to act now just to make sure that you can take advantage of that program.
All right. this will probably be our last question. So this person reconsolidated loans by the April deadline, chose the SAVE plan, previously was on a different IDR plan that wasn't too bad. Now they're saying they can't move to another IDR plan. They're stuck paying $500 more a month or being on forbearance. They want their time to count for forgiveness. So as we covered already, right, there are kind of those three options for you as far as you can either do nothing and be on the administrative forbearance, submit an IDR application to potentially move over to the IVR plan, or move over to the standard 10-year repayment plan. So those are the different options as far as being able to get your time to count towards PSLF forgiveness.
All right. So everyone, unfortunately, our time here today is up. Like I said, we don't have enough time to answer every single question. However, don't leave yet. I know there's people already leaving. Just a reminder, if we didn't answer your question today, you can still submit a question to our office by going to studentcomplaints.wa.gov. I'm once again posting that link into the chat, right? So that you don't feel like you didn't get your question answered today. Like, you can reach out to us and get your question answered. The other thing that I want to remind folks about is to please take some time to answer our survey, right? It really means a lot to us when you complete the survey and let us know how we're doing. But once again, I really appreciate you spending the time with us today. I'm going to leave the chat open just a little longer so that people can get the link in case they want to send us a follow-up question, right? But otherwise, thank you so much for your time, and I hope you have a good rest of your day.
And I'll add to, when we send out the recording and the slide deck, you'll be able to access the links when you're looking at the slides. You can click on them from that document.